Here we go, ladies. This is your fastest lesson in the entire Devo experience. We are going to talk about God's truth. God's truth is the third piece of your devotional. It follows your verse and your personal writing. So, again, if I could go back with you guys into the sample devotional, the verse that we have: do you know that in a race all runners run, but only one receives the prize? So run that you may obtain it. Every athlete exercises control in all things. They do it to receive a perishable wreath, but we an imperishable. So I do not run aimlessly. I do not box as one beating the air, but I discipline my body and to keep it under control, lest, after preaching to others, I myself should be disqualified. 1 Corinthians 9:24 through 27, and I was reading you the ESV translation. So let's talk about hidden lesson and life application. There's some really great stuff here that you've already covered. As I've told you guys again and again, if you do your homiletics, you have everything you need to complete all of your devotions. So, the hidden lesson, the first thing I can tell you is that your hidden lesson is directly from your homiletics. If you have the theme plus the goal, you basically have what your lesson is. So, what is God trying to teach you, and what is the central theme of that verse? That's really all it is your theme plus your goal. So when you're looking at that, it might be that certain words stuck out to you. It might be that the overall concept stuck out to you. It doesn't matter which. I'm going to read to you what my God's Truth section is. Again, this is from the sample devotion, and you do have this in the group. God's path isn't going anywhere, and it leads to an imperishable gift: eternity with Him. We may forget permanent joy in the midst of temporary circumstances, but God does not. We need to discipline ourselves to stay the course and focus on the great joys given by a great God. I'm going to pause there. There's another half of that, but there are a couple of things. Do you remember when we were talking in our first week, as you look at the work, what words stand out to you? So one of those ones that I repeated is I repeated that word imperishable. This is the standout word. So what is the standout word in your verse? That is probably part of the hidden lesson. The hidden lesson, the standout word, they're typically related. But then I went a step further. But God's path isn't going anywhere, and it leads to an imperishable gift: eternity with Him. So that's part 2. Define the word. So the hidden lesson, what is that standout word and what does it mean? In this case, I said eternity with God. So my hidden lesson isn't so hidden after all. If I had done my homiletics, I would have gotten to this point just through my theme and my goal. I probably could combine those two into a single sentence, or I could take the theme, or I could take the goal. I could call any one of those the hidden lesson. If I haven't done that detailed homiletics, what is the standout word or words or phrase, because there might be more than one thing, and what does that mean? So here it is. We have an imperishable gift from God. It is eternity with Him. That's really my hidden lesson. And it's not so hidden. God really doesn't want to hide that one from us. He kind of makes it known to everybody. But I'm going to continue here. Let me see. So it says, eternity with Him. We may forget permanent joy in the midst of temporary circumstances, but God does not. We need to discipline ourselves to stay the course and focus on the great joys given by a great God. In fact, in the original Greek, Paul doesn't just discipline his body, he makes it his slave so that he can use it to do God's will. He encourages us to not be distracted by things, big or little, that take us from God's path. It is on God's path that we engage in joy for this life and the next. So, a lot happened in those couple of sentences. So we have, God has an imperishable gift for us, eternity with him. That's our lesson. Then we have our application really goes to what Paul is asking of us. He's saying the application is don't be distracted. That's our application by life's little things. That's what we do in our lives. We keep ourselves from being distracted. And there's usually a part A and a part B. Do this through this. So that's one type of part A and part B. Do this through this. And that's the way that I chose to frame this. So, do this. Keep from being distracted. Through this. In the case of my verse, it's through discipline to God's will. So, your life application, do this through this. There is another way that you can do this. Excuse the repeated word there. There is another way that you can frame the life application side of your God's truth paragraph. Instead of saying do this through this, you could actually rephrase the same thing, and it's do this. And again, when I'm saying do, this could be do or don't, depending on how you're choosing to phrase. It can be do this so that this. So if I were to say this exact same piece of the paragraph in reverse, discipline yourself to God's will so that you are not distracted by life's little things. Through that, we're getting the imperishable gift of eternity with God. These all tie together. And let's get to how they tie together. I wrote this expression down here, the universal we. There are two things that you can do to alienate your reader. One is constantly talking about yourself, even if you're doing it in a self-deprecating way that you think is being humble. I know I find myself messing up on this one all the time. Okay, you might say that once or twice throughout your total of 8 devotionals, but in reality, no matter how sincere it is, that self-deprecation factor overused can almost sound a little bit fake. It almost comes across like that humble brag, where it's like, okay, great, you're so great, you're admitting all these things about yourself. That's one way that you can alienate your reader. The bottom line is, even though you're putting yourself down, for lack of better word, the reality is you're still constantly talking about yourself. So you're alienating your reader if you're I this, I that, I don't this, I don't that. Complete alienation. The other way that you can alienate your reader is the exact opposite. By specifically speaking to your reader through those pages. You know you find yourself thinking this. You know when you do that, well, guess what? After a while, the reader's going, you don't know me. Because at one point, you are bound to get it wrong. You don't always know. I actually have a story about this very recently. My daughter was listening to a speaker, and in our home, we are artists. My husband's been a lifelong musician. I've been a lifelong writer. We've both spent a lot of time in theater and in all sorts of art platforms. We are passionate about the arts, and I really believe that they are one of God's many languages. I think the great creator created creative people. And so arts, we love them. And my youngest, she's just a fabulous singer. She has this beautiful voice. And she doesn't know, honestly, if she wants to go like a military career or she wants to go to a music career. Well, in listening to this speaker recently, and this speaker was trying to talk to each of the kids about pursuing their goals. And he said to all of these kids, my daughter in the audience, you know your parents don't want you to chase your dreams. You know your parents don't believe in you when you're talking about going to become a singer. And she thought, no, that's not my parents. And immediately she disconnected. And that speaker may have had other great things to say, but the reality is he alienated her because he assumed he knew her, and he didn't. So, 2 ways that you can alienate your reader. 1 is I, and 2 is you. That's where the universal we comes in. When you have the universal we statements or universal we questions, what happens is, A, your reader is automatically feeling connected in relationship with you because you are addressing each other as a we. And 2, if you get it wrong, we sometimes this, all of a sudden the reader is looking at a higher we humanity. And either they might be feeling really good about themselves, going, oh goodness, thank goodness that's not me. So there's a lot of different ways. Or if it's something that maybe it's a positive and they have a goal toward being a certain way and you're including them in a universal we, they're like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad she thinks that's me. So the universal we, so you can alienate 2 ways. I alienates. You alienates. The universal we gives you 3 ways to connect. You're connecting through their hopes. You're connecting through their anonymity, where they're feeling like, oh my gosh, she doesn't know the bad things about me. And you're connecting in relationship because you've automatically said, hey, we're the same, you and I. So that's where the universal we comes in. And in this one, it was, we may forget permanent joy in the midst of temporary circumstances, but God does not. We need to discipline ourselves to stay the course and focus on the great joys given by a great God. So the only other thing that I have in here, so we have our hidden lesson, which is our theme of God, our life. I did it with a standout word that I defined. If you did your homiletics, you can also do the theme plus the goal. You could do the theme, or you could do the goal. So it doesn't matter. You can do the theme, the theme and the goal together, or you can do a standout word defined. That's going to be what your hidden lesson is. Your life application is written in one of 2 ways. Do this through this. Don't be distracted by life's little things. Through discipline to God's will. Or do this so that this. Discipline yourself to God's will so that you will not be distracted by by life's little things. So do this through this, or do this so that this. And then you connect those 2 sections through the universal we. So once again, I'm going to read you from that sample devotional the full God's truth. The other thing that I have mixed in there is a little bit of etymology and word emphasis, which is that bonus lesson that you guys are going to get before we have our next community builder. So here is that God's truth paragraph. See if you can hear in it the hidden lesson, the life application, and the universal we's. But God's path isn't going anywhere, and it leads to an imperishable gift, eternity with Him. We may forget permanent joy in the midst of temporary circumstances, but God does not. We need to discipline ourselves to stay the course and focus on the great joys given by a great God. In fact, in the original Greek, Paul doesn't just discipline his body, he makes it his slave so that he can use it to do God's will. He encourages us to not be distracted by things big or little that take us from God's path. It is on God's path that we engage in joy for this life and the next. God's truth is about trying to tell your reader what it is you're teaching them through this verse and what God is teaching them through this verse. And hopefully these enhancers, the hidden lesson and the life application, tied together with the universal we, maybe with a little etymology mixed in. Those are all things that are going to enhance God's truth. But once again, I remind you, if you did your homiletics, you don't need this. This is just a bonus. So once again, keep it up. You guys are doing great. This has been Hidden Lesson and Life Application.